Welcome. Hope y'all had a good Thanksgiving last week. We're excited. December is coming tomorrow. We're all excited about what's coming on this Christmas Eve. We're back with Congressman Fleischmann, and we're going to talk about international affairs. We got a bunch to talk about. We want to talk about the Israeli-Gaza, which could take up a whole show. We want to talk about Ukraine and Russia, what's really going on. Republicans, at least in my world, are becoming frustrated with the hundreds of billion dollars plus going to Ukraine. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about some other areas, China and other areas of the world. Our good friend Sean Williams, my favorite expert on international relations, will be eating dinner with us tonight, so that'll be good.
Fantastic.
That guy knows everything. That guy, he's in the world. He's in that world.
He's a great patriot, too.
Jumped out airplane, 135 times?
Yes,
busted
indeed.
his back up, and he's a good guy. He's helped me a lot over the years, et cetera, et cetera. And on that thought, I want to thank Sean Gleason and IB3, Susanna Navarro for helping sponsor our show, and, of course, Attorney Daniel Forrester. But we've had some great sponsors this year.
We sure do.
Oak Ridge Utility Districts helped us a lot. And we've been very fortunate and blessed in all of that. Let's just get to it, because we're going to battle on this one a little bit. Let's start with Ukraine and Russia. Here's my opinion. I lived through the Vietnam War. You were little. So I went through the Vietnam War, and I'd get up every night, Walter Cronkite, I'd get 243 died. Today we'd have our statistics. We'd have all that stuff going on. Exciting time in the 60s, 70s, not for that, but for the other things, et cetera, et cetera. But every day we knew what was going on. So we got Ukraine-Russia war information for about 3 months, and it became unimportant. I mean, it got off the news. When's the last time you saw a news broadcast on the Ukrainian war? It's once a week or whatever. It's not part of our daily news lives. Yeah, I got friends that actually think it's a wag the dog deal where, the tail's wagging the dog, where maybe they're all cutting the money up. Maybe they're doing this. What's going on? Why are we sending billions of dollars that they can't see anything going on? So we need some clarification. I don't believe those things, but I want to get the clarification of, a lot of conservatives don't like exporting billions of dollars.
Here's the situation.
Okay.
We need to have more accountability as to where the money is going and how things are going there. But the stark reality is we cannot let Putin win in Ukraine. And let me kind of step back and basically kind of put it in perspective. For whatever reason, and we don't know why Vladimir Putin chose to do what he did. Candidly, I was a little bit surprised. If you think I was surprised, our allies in Europe were stunned. They told us they never thought this would happen. America actually thought there was a very good chance that it would happen, and it did. What has happened is Putin has gone into that country and stepped back a little bit. In 2015, they went into Georgia. They took over 20% of that country and have stayed.
Yep.
They actually went into part of the Crimea and took over that in Ukraine and stayed.
Okay, now I'm going to ask questions in this situation. What's the motivation? See, I think it's psychological. Putin was being seen as weaker. He's dying. He's doing this. Things are happening. He's not got as much control as he did. Boom, he shows some aggression, starts a war, and he's popular in his own country.
I don't know for sure, but I can give you an educated guess.
Good.
Putin is an ex-KGB agent.
Right.
The Soviet Union was the system in which he grew up. And you could never, ever, you saw that with the death of Gorbachev. I mean, he was defiled when he died in his own country. The West said, good job, right? What did you remember? Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, Ronald Reagan. He did. I don't think Vladimir Putin or his group, ruling group in Russia, have ever gotten over the sheer and utter demise of the Soviet Union.
Or the embarrassment.
I mean, the embarrassment. It collapsed. And all of those
But it collapsed because it was economically not strong enough to survive.
Because communism
Reagan finally figured that out. His team did.
That's right. And Reagan outspent him on the nuclear weapons and everything and outmaneuvered him. But it collapsed. And that's a hard thing, I think, for a Russian leader to accept.
Proud people.
That's right. So, and remember this. There's a movie out right now about Napoleon. We have to remember, Russia has been attacked and attacked and attacked. Napoleon burned Moscow.
What's the point of going after Russia? Just sheer size or something?
The size, the resources today. In World War I, actually, Russia surrendered to Germany. Germany lost the war, but Russia surrendered to Germany. So
to the Kaiser,
yes. So it is traditionally, and then, of course, in World War II,
well, they stood their ground there.
Well, no and yes. a lot of people don't realize that Hitler and Stalin actually signed a non-aggression pact, and Hitler broke that. So when Hitler actually attacked Poland, the Russians came in and they actually had half of that. They split Poland. So the Russians,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the Russians did not have halos on their head. They had a non-aggressive pact with Germany. Then Germany actually surprised Stalin, and when he attacked, moved through Russia and actually all the way almost close up to Moscow. Not until Stalingrad that the German army got stopped there. But Stalin was embarrassed and stunned by that. So the Russians have had this ethos for years. They've been attacked. Again, from Napoleon on, they've had
But not unlike the Israelis.
right. Well, the
Except it's more
Israelis
geographically here, not.
that geographical
It's
and
not.
even longer term.
Yeah.
So,
It's-
so what has happened in Ukraine? So he attacks, and he attacks everywhere. We thought maybe he would just come in perhaps from the northeast, or maybe try to come in from Crimea in the south. When he did this, he has had destruction wreaked on that entire country. What does that do? First of all, it changes the
Why
potential.
Ukraine? Why would Putin pick Ukraine?
Well, for several reasons. First of all, he wanted to make sure that Ukraine would not join NATO. Okay.
Yeah, we understand
And
that.
you
Yeah,
have
I
to
got
understand that. And everything he's done is wrong. But I can understand him, meaning Putin, saying, "I don't want any more of these former Soviet satellite states joining NATO."
Got it.
They have security concerns, but this was just sheer aggression. But if you look at what the agricultural production of Ukraine, the manufacturing of Ukraine, and what has gone on there, Russia has taken huge casualties. Now, so have the Ukrainians, taken huge casualties in this war. It is still going on.
That should make it unpopular at home in Russia.
It is very unpopular at home in
Okay,
Russia.
okay.
But you saw a mercenary army actually form out of the Wagner Group.
Yep.
Actually drive into Russia and being hailed. And they didn't get to Moscow. They worked it out beforehand. Of course, they blew him up in a plane afterwards.
Did he get killed?
Yeah.
The general?
They did, the mercenary general. But the reality is, there's still a hot war. Now, when I went to Kyiv in 2017, there were border wars going on. So they were
Okay.
shooting, but it was not full-scale war.
Sure.
But the reality is, we can't let Russia win. If Russia wins there, the balance of power, and then what will they take next? Okay, they do have some allies in the region. Belarus is actually a Russian ally. Other countries are vehemently against that. But I can tell you this. I went to Europe. The French are adamantly against the Russians in this. I was actually in Rome, Italy. I looked up and they had the French embassy. They were flying the Ukrainian flag. They're that. The Italians, Moroni, her people may not be as strong and supportive, but she's supporting Ukraine. So most, if not all, of Western Europe is united against that. I don't know where this ends. I would hope that they could negotiate a peace, but the Russians just don't want to do that now. And I think it's just been all about Putin.
So, do the Russians have more territory or less territory than they had a year ago?
I don't know about a year ago, more now than they had when they started the war.
Okay. So the Russians have taken cities and land.
Yes. Now they've lost in some areas, but the Ukrainians have suffered some losses too.
Yeah.
So it's not been one way. I can't look people in the eye and say,
On this day, November 30th, are bullets flying?
Yes.
Okay, so there are engagements going on.
There are engagements in several parts of the state, several parts of the country, and the like, and it's yet to be determined what is going to happen. Interestingly enough, Russia's only really, in my view, true ally in the world is China. China is embarrassed at how, and shocked at how poorly Russia has performed militarily. Russia should have just been able to roll over there.
Yeah.
They did not. They need munitions. This is what's sad. They're getting drones from Iran. They're actually getting munitions from North Korea. So things have not gone well for the Russian war machine. The last time Russia saw something like this was in Afghanistan,
Right.
when they were the Soviet Union. But
They're on their home court.
they're on their. That's right. And but that's really where that situation is. What do I think will happen? I think you'll see a separate Israel package, aid package pass. Ultimately, I do think you'll see an additional Ukrainian aid package passed with some very, very strict constraints on accountability.
Now we need those. Tell me about the Ukraine is the biggest grain shipper in the world or something. Has that been interrupted?
Yes. When the entire, well, first of all, the Russians have tinkered with some of the grain deals that have been out there in place. But the reality is it's a huge breadbasket, not only wheat, a lot of agriculture. And what's going to happen is if this continues, we could literally see famine in Africa. Okay, the Russians, I think, just started actually sending free grain again back into Africa because Russia produces a lot of grain as well. But this is a country that is needed for its agricultural production, its manufacturing. They produce a lot of key manufacturing gases that are even used in the West. But the whole thing, I just don't know why Putin did it. And when you think about it, let's talk Oak Ridge, right? Oak Ridge produces, in terms of medical isotopes, and other isotopes, national security isotopes and manufacturing.
That's my father's area.
Probably of the 300 plus rare ones, we probably do 280, 290 of them. We're the only source in Oak Ridge in the West for some of those, other than Russia. And it's just been a destabilizing situation. I'd like to see the rest of the world really clamp down. Now, one of the bad things is when the price of oil went up, who benefited? The Russians and the Iranians.
Right.
So that's why I wish we could just have more abundant oil, drive that down. Don't feed that.
Why is
Russian
gas
war.
280 all of a sudden? Why has it gone down so much?
It's a good question. I just have to go back to supply and demand.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, we'll come back. We'll visit that. You following up on Sean Williams' report on the show. Basically, you start populations moving and you start things happening. It disrupts a lot of economies and the food supply.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Israel. Okay, that's an expertise of yours above and beyond other areas.
Sure.
Even though your international work is pretty well, you travel, you work, you represent the United States and a lot of stuff. Let me say this.
And I'm an appropriator serving on the State and Foreign Operations
Right.
Subcommittee, so we fund that.
Okay.
So in fairness to the listeners.
Yeah, so it makes you popular.
Yep.
So,
Or on,
yeah.
depending what side you're on, right?
That's true. So anyway, here's the situation. We're sitting there, there's some general sympathy for the Palestinians, I think, worldwide, including us. I mean, not in conflict with Israel, but they're poor, they're disadvantaged, kind of like the Irish in England. I mean, I can make some different arguments. My friends that have gone over there and visited Israel and gone to the West say it's really sad the way these people live, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe they brought that on themselves, but I'm just saying that's part of the situation. But all of a sudden, you see Iran and others teaching, organizing. This is what I know from the news and reading articles. Prepping, and this whole invasion into Israel, which was totally unsuspected, I would think.
That's right.
Which is a
Israel got
little
caught
bit,
sleeping.
which makes
Yes.
me wonder, with the best intelligence agency in the world, were they really that? I don't know. But anyway, so they come in and they kill and capture 1,500 Israelis or some number like that. Totally stunned the Israelis that they would be that.
Agreed.
The Israelis, then there was never any doubt, are getting organized to go. I mean, back then we're getting organized. Now they're going in to stop this and to permanently fix this. So that's what I know about it.
Right.
So what
In Gaza.
in Gaza?
That's right.
And what are they doing in Gaza?
Well, they started in
have
the
an
north.
army in there?
They have an army in
Okay.
there.
That's
and-
the EDF
and-
or the Defense
the
Force?
IDF, the Israeli
IDF, yeah.
Defense Force. Now, understanding the dynamics of this, they are going to go into Gaza and try to totally destroy Hamas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, to do that, and you're seeing pictures now from the hospital and they've captured some Hamas people that said they were masquerading
saw
as
those.
doctors and
Yeah.
and
How
all
do they
that.
know a Hamas person from a doctor?
They don't. That's the problem. And see, the fact that Hamas is so embedded in Gaza and the like, and that's why I do feel sorry for the civilians who are suffering there, but Israel told them to move south. But now Israel is actually going to go from the north to the middle, now to the south, and to try to totally eradicate Hamas.
Will Israel ever leave their Gaza? I don't think they leave.
Only if two things happen. An international force that would go in there and actually be
Police
able
it.
to make sure, police it, so that these rocket attacks that have been coming out of there and are still coming out of there would stop. But you can't just view it as the Gaza Strip. If you look to the West Bank, if you're looking at Israel, there's the West Bank, that's where Abbas is ruling. Now, Hamas has a presence there, okay? Not a large presence.
Hezbollah's in the north.
Well, now Hezbollah is actually in
Hezbollah.
Lebanon. It is in the north, but Hezbollah is actually also funded by Iran, as is Hamas, as are the Houthis who are in Yemen. But in the north, Hezbollah is actually in the government of Lebanon. I've been to Lebanon. I've been to Beirut. It's an interesting situation. The Orthodox Christians get a seat. The Sunni Muslims get a seat. The Shia Muslims get a seat. But Hezbollah is actually in the government there. When we landed, we couldn't stay there. We had to go in and go out. But Hezbollah now has been shelling, and God forbid this escalates. That's my biggest concern, because ultimately there could be more problems in the West Bank with Hezbollah, with Syria. And I will say this, as Americans, over 60 attacks, 64 attacks to be exact, have occurred to date where pro-Iranian-backed militias have attacked American installations in either Iraq or Syria. So that is not good.
You know what's interesting? And my background's more theology. I do have some political and geographical study background, but it's interesting because I tell people all the time they don't really understand it. But Islam and Jewish traditions are linked. They're both monotheistic. In other words, a person who believes in Islam can go into a Jewish temple, but they can't go into a Christian church because of the divided Godhead. So it's interesting because when you look at, if you look at the history, I don't understand the animosity of the Middle Eastern people against Israel. I mean, they share more traditions than they do with Christians, in a sense, except where we grew out of the Jewish faith. But
it has gone on for centuries.
Yeah, I don't really understand.
And the like, even when the Romans were there, and the Romans burned the temple at 70 AD?
70 AD.
And the like, and
but that was a Roman deal. That wasn't an Islamic deal.
That's
Islam
right.
didn't come into 5th century.
That's right.
Muhammad was alive in the 5th century.
But my point is the poor Jewish people have suffered and suffered from time untold. Here's the situation as I see it. Right now, it is not good. I think you're correct in your assessment that the United Nations and some other countries have traditionally, sadly in my view, been more pro-Palestinian overtly and anti-Israel. Even in light of these horrific attacks, we did not see all of the condemnation I think that should have been out there. I mean, this was bad. Having said that, I think the United States will continue to stand with Israel. Very surprised to see the anti-Semitic rhetoric that is out there on some of the college campuses and things like that.
Easy infiltration for Hamas and people like that. I mean, you get in there and kids want to be a part of anything. They want to believe in anything.
Well, and the American progressive left is promoting this, which is interesting.
No, I hear that, and it's all over the internet, and I hear it from my son and other people that ask, well, what about this? What about these poor people? I mean, you see it everywhere. I was just born in an era where there's not much I wouldn't do for Israel. I mean, I'm just pro-Israeli all the way.
Right.
To a point of fairness. I mean,
as am I. They're our largest recipient of U.S. aid.
I didn't know that.
Yes, by far. Second is Egypt. Now, Egypt has been a very good actor. I've met with Sisi on several times. I've been in his office in Cairo. Sisi, when I met with Sisi, and this is long before all the problems in the Middle East, was like, Israel's not our problem. Iran and Turkey are our problem. Yeah. So having said that, it's going to be very interesting, though. There's some dynamics going on in the Middle East. Will Saudi Arabia, who's up here, and Iran, Saudi a big Sunni Muslim country, Iran a largely Shia Muslim country, but they both want to be the big actor in the neighborhood. Sure. China put them together, and they're negotiating. We were not sure, but one of the reasons we think that this was launched by Iran and Hamas in Israel was because Saudi Arabia was getting ready to perhaps normalization with Israel.
I heard that.
And that would have been wonderful for Mideast peace. Remember, the accords with the UAE, with Bahrain, and I think Oman under Trump was staggering. I mean, I've met with the sheik, and it's like, we got no problem with Israel. But I do think this. Egypt's in a tough spot because their population. You've got still the Muslim Brotherhood, not running Egypt, but they're in there and stuff like that. So they're going to be inherently anti.
Where's Saudi Arabia in all this?
Saudi Arabia is sitting back, and traditionally, obviously, they have been anti-Israel and very pro-Palestinian, and have provided the Palestinians with a lot of aid. Saudi Arabia wants to continue to be the big actor. They always viewed Iran as a potential threat. And remember, after we demolished Iraq, okay, and Saddam Hussein, who was a dictator, who was a bad guy, but that was the only real major check on Iran in the neighborhood.
Sure.
And that really emboldened Iran's position. So I think the Saudis are wait-see right now. Their populace probably will be more pro-Palestinian, but I think their leadership will be open. I think they want to remain the predominant actor in the Middle East.
Well, you can't be a predominant in the Middle East and a big actor if you lose all your Western allies on the argument. You got to stay with your money people, right?
You would think so, but if Iran, and that's where Iran, even though they've lost pretty much everybody in the West, has Russia. Okay.
And who does Iraq have?
Well,
are they
Iraq's
a player anymore?
No, they're not.
Okay.
Iraq has been really decimated.
A lot of history there.
A lot of history there. Interestingly enough, a friend of mine I served with, he took Saddam Hussein out of the hole when they got him, and he questioned him, and he did a medical examination of him, and Saddam Hussein said, look, this is where the Garden of Eden was, and he just had through his interpreter, just an interesting conversation with one of my brothers in Congress, who took him out of the hole. But it's tumultuous. Let me say this, two things that worry me. God forbid Iran getting the capability of delivering a nuclear weapon. You've got to get it to 90% plus to be weapons grade. I think that's out there. Enough people have talked about it on the media. We don't know if they're there or not. They may be. But then, of course, they'd have to figure out a way to make one and deliver them. That is scary. Also, the thing that I really faulted Putin for was his threat of actually using a tactical nuclear weapon on the battlefield. That is something that's a non-starter.
You know, it's funny, my father's generation, where they built all of this, he's part of the entire Oppenheimer generation, and they using a nuclear weapon or a hydrogen weapon was just inconceivable. Now, the military machine has figured out how to neutralize that to where it goes 3 miles west and 2 miles north. Our tactical nuclear weapons can be shot at Cookeville. They don't necessarily hurt Crossville or whatever downwinds and all, but tactical nuclear weapons can do small deliveries, right?
They can, but just think of the long-range radiological problems in that area and the like. But the fact that somebody would actually considering doing that, we grew up in what we call the MAD world, MAD, the mutual assured destruction.
That's right.
And it was like, look, we will never fire on you because you can fire back on us.
That's
and of course, when we had 5, you had 10, and we went to 15, you went to 20. We've reduced the nuclear
But when a guy will drive his car, a suicide bomber will drive his car into something or van. That's no different than pushing the button. If those people ever get into power,
That's right.
they don't care if they destroy it or not.
It is scary.
It's scary. Let's take a break. Let's go, Brad, for a couple, 3 minutes. We'll be back with Congressman Fleischmann, and we're going to talk a little bit about China.
Daniel Forrester has been trusted by Anderson County families for nearly 2 decades. Daniel has appeared in Anderson County Chancery, Circuit, Sessions, and Juvenile Court thousands of times over the past decade. A Rule 31 mediator, Daniel has been trusted to mediate hundreds of cases across Anderson County. A community leader, Daniel has worked closely with local officials to make Anderson County a better place. A conservative and dedicated husband and father, Daniel's faith has shaped his character and integrity. On March 5th, vote Daniel Forrester for Anderson County Chancellor.
From Oak Ridge, Tennessee, IB3 Global Solutions conducts operations around the world to enhance the U.S. national security posture and minimize radiological and nuclear threats. IB3 Global Solutions. Mission first.
Fan Gear Barn is Oak Ridge's source for new and vintage sports fan gear from around the world of sports. Find your favorite team gear at Fan Gear Barn, located at 977 Oak Ridge Turnpike, across from the hospital. Open 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., 6 days a week. Closed on Sundays.
At Navarro, we partner with our clients to advance clean energy and deliver effective solutions for complex challenges in the nuclear and environmental fields.
When should you get tested for COVID-19? You have symptoms of COVID-19, such as runny nose, congestion, sore throat, fever, cough, shortness of breath, muscle pain, headache, chills, or loss of taste or smell. Current testing recommendations say everyone should get tested immediately if they have symptoms of COVID-19. If you have symptoms, be sure to follow recommendations about how long to stay home and away from others. For more information, visit our If You Are Sick or Test Positive webpage.
All right, crew, let's get started. All right.
Don't ignore the law. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 days before any digging project so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
Welcome back. We're doing and talking about world issues with Congressman Chuck Fleischmann, who sits on a lot of different important committees, appropriates in charge on the committee, subcommittee, appropriating monies for worldwide engagements and different things to protect America and our defense. Congressman, tell me about China. They're the big player in the world. And all of these things we're talking about, maybe not as much in Israel and Gaza, but certainly in Ukraine and Russia and other places, China has a major influence.
China has a plan, and I grew up pretty much the same era of you. In 1962, I was born. China was always viewed as that, in the modern era, that backward country, okay?
Third world. Made in China, right?
Japan went in and just wrought havoc in World War II there. They were just never going to get there. They have a communist revolution under Mao Zedong that is basically taking Marxism, not in an industrial country, but in a largely poor agrarian country.
It's easier to do in an agrarian country.
Right, but it was odd. But yeah, and then he had this cultural revolution and the like. Richard Nixon, with Henry Kissinger, decides to open up negotiations with China.
With the help of the Vatican.
Yes, and that's right. And a Democrat could have never done that, let's face it. Okay, so Nixon did that. So China, a large population, no longer the largest, India just passed it, but a large population, was a poor country, but has embarked as a competitor very aggressively to build an internal system where it's a very controlled economy. They've got their president Xi, who is basically president for life. He's an authoritarian ruler, but Biden called him a dictator the other day. He got in trouble. Blinken was like, "Oh my gosh!" But Joe was right on that. But you're just not supposed to do that in diplomatic talk. But the reality is, they have a plan. They're competing against us to try to become, if they are not already, the world's largest economy. But it's either us or them. But they are going into countries in South America, in Africa, all over the world, and competing. And they've got, sadly, a very alluring model. I had a friend of mine tell me recently, foreign friend, we'd love to do business with the Americans, but when we sit down with the Americans, we get a lecture. When we sit down with the Chinese, we get a plan. And what is that plan? That plan is, okay, if you want something, a road, we will design the road, build the road, pay for the road, okay, and then you can pay us back. It's almost like the old company store thing. Now, sadly, we're starting to see that in the nuclear realm, okay? China is a nuclear power. Obviously, they have a nuclear arsenal on the weapons side, but they are also a civil nuclear power. And they're going to be very competitive with us trying to bring their type of reactors to the rest of the world to sell them, to market them. But think about this. They'll go in and they'll say, with that reactor, we'll design it, we'll build it, okay, we'll take away your spent nuclear fuel. You don't have to worry about any of this. What are the Americans going to do? Well, maybe we can get some financing for you, okay? So we're going to have to address that. The bottom line, China is a player in the international realm. In their region, there's no question whatsoever that they have their eye on Taiwan. Ever since the split, okay, Mao took over, what, 49?
49.
Okay, Chiang Kai-shek leaves and goes to Nationalist China, Taiwan.
Yeah.
So he goes to the island. Hong Kong was a British lease for, what, 100 years? That now has gone back to the People's Republic of China. They've got Hong Kong. So
But they let it operate as they used to.
Yes and no, but the House now, if you will, if we were talking to casino talk, is now People's Republic of China.
Sure.
It's no longer the British.
Sure.
But I'm going to make a prediction. As aggressive as China is, as strong as China is, as adversarial as they are, I do think ultimately they will have internal problems far worse than us. And we have handled, if you will, not that we don't have problems, but we have handled capitalism and growth and our programs much better. I think that ultimately, now, if China were to ever have an economic collapse, which I think is someday in the offing, what does that do to the world economy? Because remember, we're kind of entangled with them as well. That's why I applaud President Trump. And Trump was talking about this when I visited with him, that he basically took on China as a competitor.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah, and he said, "Look, I'm going to make sure that we put tariffs on your goods and the like." So he blames Biden for having a big backsliding in relations with China, so now that their goods are just pouring in again. So the check on that's going to be interesting. They are, I would argue this, the United States is the lone remaining superpower, true superpower in the world. China is a close second. Russia would be a poor third.
Well, this is me, but
And that's an opinion.
looming in the background with an overwhelmingly powerful lot of things. India's going to be a player at some point.
Absolutely. You can't overlook, number one, the most populous nation in the world.
Been atomic for years.
Yes. Interesting situation. What they did in India, and you have to give them credit. Remember, this was a British colony.
But you know what's so funny? When you go to the hospital, it's an Indian doing your surgery. When you go over here, it's an Indian doing this job. You go over here. I mean, they are very capable people.
Brilliant people.
And when they got 1 billion plus people, at some point, they're not as aggressive as China and other places. But at some point, that world economy is going to be huge.
Well, tell that to Pakistan, but
Yeah, well,
and
they
of
can't
course
keep up.
For our listeners, as part of the deal to get them to fight for the British in World War II, it's like you're going to have to give us the independence. So you had India, then Pakistan broke off, which was largely Muslim. India has Muslims, but it's largely Hindu. It has a lot of Christians there too. It's big, but their economy and their growing middle class is going to be formidable. There's no question about that. It's going to be interesting to see where they go with their energy needs. Overall,
Tremendous. I mean, they must have a tremendous education system, or is it cultural, or?
I don't know, but as you alluded to, fortunately, many people from India want to come to the United States and live here and prosper here, and they've done exceedingly well.
I can remember some friends of mine who were executives at Blue Cross Blue Shield. You needed a kidney transplant, they flew you to Bombay and flew you back. It was cheaper to go round trip and have an Indian do the surgery than it was to have it in America 20 years ago, 15 years ago. So the Indians have been producing internally, domestically,
Yes.
a lot of work, exporting a lot of
Yes.
medical care and other things.
Well, and India made a decision a long time ago, I think a very smart decision. When they got their independence from Great Britain, they basically, in many ways, at that point in time, decided to close their borders and have a program where there was domestic reliance on manufacturing. So we're going to produce this, but we're going to produce it in India and the like. So their middle class is growing. They're doing exceedingly well. They still have, because of their large population, large pockets of poverty.
Well, you know, and our whole experience as children and growing up was Mother Teresa. We saw so much
Yes.
poverty that, you know, in the North it wasn't as bad.
Yeah.
But, I mean, how is their, so what you're saying is they're not an international player because they choose to keep things within their own country.
It's interesting. If they are, I'd have to say they're an international player, but certainly not on the level of the United States,
Or China.
China, and or Russia. But they want to be. And
What
they've-
about Japan?
Japan has had such economic woes. I mean, when I was a kid, everything was made in Japan, not China, and Japan was going to be.
Well, they don't have the manpower to keep up.
And they don't, and Japan, I think, will continue to struggle and be very wary of China. Japan is scared to death of China because of
They
a
owe
lot of
them.
the World War II.
They owe them, yeah, that's
and,
right.
and the like.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you got North Korea. You got to talk about that. And by the way, you were talking about India. You have to put this in the equation. Both India and Pakistan have nuclear weapons.
And both of them have militaries?
Yes. Large militaries.
Nobody ever says, hey, I saw an Indian warship yesterday. I mean, you just don't hear anything about India.
Well, and they do have a Navy, and they obviously are such a big.
Are they focused on each other mainly?
Yes.
Okay.
Very, very much so.
Pakistan's about a third the size of, I know the history,
Right.
Muslim separation from Hindus.
Yeah.
But, you know,
So.
do the two religions or cultures coexist in the other countries? I mean, do Muslims still live in India
Yes.
in numbers? And do Indian Hindus live in Pakistan? They never left. Geographically, it was all India back then. But geographically, they still live in pockets. They didn't cross the border.
Well, right
They
now,
really-
I know some folks who are Muslims who live in India, and they try to peacefully coexist with the Hindu majority. There are large Christian pockets in terms of the provinces. A gentleman, very great mind here, from the Oak Ridge community of Indian, was born in India, strong Episcopalian.
Yeah.
Said, how did that happen? Church of England. Made sense.
Yeah.
But it's a big country. It's got its challenges. I think you're going to see Russia and China try to play for the affections of India. It's a big market. You can never underestimate a market of that for goods.
Well, you know, I always said that in the end, the Chinese would never attack us or invade us or do anything to us because we're too big a customer. You got to keep your customers happy.
There's an age-old. I used to do a lot of bankruptcy work when I was a lawyer, always on the creditor side, and you'd go in there, and the debtor's best friend at the table was that bank because he wanted him to succeed. And it's the age-old adage, somebody told me in bankruptcy court, if you owe the bank $1, they own you. If you owe them $1 million, you own them.
That's right.
And we owe China. China is buying up our debt. I'm glad you raised that. There was a time during World War II when we were spending over 100% of our gross domestic product to win the war. Good idea.
Yeah.
But Americans owned American debt. Now over 50% of our debt is owned by foreign countries. A lot of that is China.
Right.
Okay, and they're still buying our debt.
Yeah, it's because it's a good investment.
Yeah, that's right. God forbid countries stop buying our debt. That's always one of the fears.
Yeah.
Who's going to buy it? So, and Americans are buying up that debt as well. But still, it's over 50%. So that puts you in a very disadvantaged position. But no, I think you're smart to bring India in the mix. And there's about 9 countries now officially, maybe another 2, that have a nuclear capability. Mm-hmm. And India and Pakistan are 2 of those.
England, France, Russia,
Yes,
United States.
Canada.
What's Canada going to do with it?
And Israel. Israel's got it.
Oh, yeah, they were
Okay.
first.
Yeah, well,
60. Well, when you got Einstein and the boys over there working, you're going to
well,
get
actually, that's not talked about a lot, but Israel has a nuclear deterrent. So, and the Iranians know it.
Yeah, it's a good thing they do. I don't trust. It's just a different world. I guess it's just a different world. Let's talk about South America just for a second.
Sure.
What's going on in South America? We don't hear much anymore.
Well, the left.
We heard a lot of it.
Well, the left has done. This is horrible. When I think of a country like Argentina. Well, no, Argentina just like a right wing.
For 30 years.
Venezuela. I had Venezuela on my mind. Venezuela had oil. It had one of those vibrant countries in South America. They go left with Maduro, destroys the country. Colombia has gone left. Our good ally has gone left. They're destroying the country. They're destroying Peru, Chile, going through these countries, many of whom were originally Spanish colonies, and then gained their independence. The bright spot, I will say this, Argentina just went right. They were the left was destroying their country. The left destroys everything, unfortunately. Economically, my strong belief, socialism does not work. Okay, it just.
I think we proved that. Work. I think ideologically, it's a notable goal, but it just the idea of sharing stuff and everything works. But I think in the end, you can't force people into that kind of world.
But South America, a lot of potential, a lot of resources. Brazil went left. These are big countries with big economies, huge markets. Hopefully, they've addressed their rainforest deforestation and things like that.
Mexico,
wow.
They got the same border issues we do, right?
They do, but they have such internal problems. Now, we have crime in our cities, but crime in their cities, like Mexico City, people tell me who go down there, they don't go there unless they have armed guards with them.
That's what they used to tell me in the old days.
And it's bad. Mexico is in an interesting situation. They go back and forth, right and left. Now they're left. Again, I would like to see more conservative, free market people elected, okay, because the left in this country is hypocritical. They complained when we had right-wing dictators throughout South America, okay? Then they got left-wing dictators and they stopped complaining, okay? My point is I don't want dictators to the right or left, but I would like to see conservative governments that are pro-free market, that are pro-United States. And, of course, what do these other left-wing countries in South America do? They warm up to China. I mean, China has tremendous influence.
It's like Cuba and Russia when we were young.
There you go.
2 more minute break. Whatever we got put together, Brad, I'm ready to go.
Daniel Forrester has been trusted by Anderson County families for nearly 2 decades. Daniel has appeared in Anderson County Chancery, Circuit, Sessions, and Juvenile Court thousands of times over the past decade. A Rule 31 mediator, Daniel has been trusted to mediate hundreds of cases across Anderson County. A community leader, Daniel has worked closely with local officials to make Anderson County a better place. A conservative and dedicated husband and father, Daniel's faith has shaped his character and integrity. On March 5th, vote Daniel Forrester for Anderson County Chancellor.
We should never lose sight of our health. To keep moving forward, let's not forget everything we've learned. Limit the salty food options. Make your own daily exercise routine. And always receive regular checkups. More than anything, we have learned how important these small steps can make a big difference. So we can all continue to move forward together.
Crew, let's get started. All right.
Don't ignore the law. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 days before any digging project so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
From Oak Ridge, Tennessee, IB3 Global Solutions conducts operations around the world to enhance the U.S. national security posture and minimize radiological and nuclear threats. IB3 Global Solutions. Mission first.
At Navarro, we partner with our clients to advance clean energy and deliver effective solutions for complex challenges in the nuclear and environmental fields.
Fan Gear Barn is Oak Ridge's source for new and vintage sports fan gear from around the world of sports. Find your favorite team gear at Fan Gear Barn, located at 977 Oak Ridge Turnpike, across from the hospital. Open 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., 6 days a week. Closed on Sundays.
We got 7 or 8 minutes left here talking about international diplomacy in the United States is different things. I'm going to switch to Europe for a second. We've got about 7 or 8 minutes left.
I just got back a couple months ago.
You went to Rome, yeah? How about
went to France and to Italy, yeah.
So let's talk about the World Bank, finances, debt, and those kind of things. How does the United States play in those worlds? And has the East made any moves into those worlds? I mean... And how does Switzerland stay so neutral? All these
Switzerland's just smart. Yeah,
they got the geography. Don't they?
Although Machiavelli would have said that neutrality is not good. In a fight between two, pick somebody. You got one friend and one foe.
That's right.
Having said that, I've been neutral a lot in a lot of issues and races and the like. How was Europe? Had a great time in France. Visited with them. Went to see Airbus in Toulouse.
We still do a lot of business over there in Europe?
Yes, an awful lot. Italy was great. Went to Rome, went to Naples, met with Italian officials, met with French officials, went to London, actually spoke at an international nuclear symposium.
Separate trip?
Yep, and the like. Interesting. England is having problems. Post-Brexit, they're having major problems.
They stayed out of Brexit, though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
They got out, and
Good for them.
they started. But and that was their decision. However, they are having major problems. I support the Tories. I like the Conservatives, but there's going to be elections next year sometime. It's just been one problem after the other. Having said that, they had some very furtive discussions with me on nuclear power, what they want to do. They've supported the United States initiatives. They're supporting Israel. They're supporting Ukraine. Germans, very, very interesting situation. Made a decision not to go nuclear, and that was going to make them dependent, heavily dependent, sadly, on Russian natural gas. They may take another look at that, but the Germans have been probably Israel's most steadfast supporter, which is very interesting. Conversations I've had with German government leaders, it's interesting. They are so attuned to being pacifistic now, and it's just a very interesting dynamic, whether you talk with their center-right, their center, or their left. But Europe, through the EU, most of the countries have adopted the same currency and the like, and they operate as a bloc. I think doing generally well. Probably have some population problems on the downside. Their populations are waning.
Like we do.
Yeah, and the like. But I think as a bloc, working well, contributing to NATO, I think they need to step up. I think NATO is doing better, attracting more interest and the like. But I think Europe, in a word, I'd say Europe is stable.
Let's finish the conversation on next year's elections.
Yes.
All right. Oh, do I? Okay, thank you.
That means he's going to talk about me. I want to win again.
Well, so the U.S. House,
the
U.S. Senate, and the presidency are up for grabs.
Okay.
Now let's just do the scores. U.S., you're +7 in the House?
I think we're +6, but...
Okay, +6 or 7. Could have sworn it was 7. Okay, U.S., okay, the House.
Vacancy.
Oh, that's one vacancy, that's right. Okay, the Senate is 51-49 Dems.
That is correct. And
Somebody can't show now. Now, what we got in the Senate?
Let's be honest. You're right, but there's a couple of eyes in there who caucus with the Dems.
That's right.
So
it's really 49 all with
that's
two
right.
eyes. But our boy's not running in West Virginia.
That's
He's gonna
correct.
Stick out. Okay, so ours going to get that job.
That's
there
right.
ain't no way anybody
Probably
can win.
Justice will win.
Yeah,
that race.
somebody will win there. Okay, so that's a good
The winner
part.
of the Republican
And
primary will
it's
win.
a Republican favorable election because more Dems are up than ours. I mean, when you read the streets, so we should come out of this area plus, we say this every time, but plus 2 or 3.
You hope.
You hope.
Or better, if we have a good night.
Yeah, but
Montana.
we should be at least 50-50.
Arizona,
Yeah.
that's right, in play.
Okay.
If we don't shoot ourselves in the foot. Now, so for our listeners, the entire House is up every 2 years.
yeah.
People, are you on the ballot? I'm always on the ballot.
Only a third of the senators.
Only a third of the Senate, and that's very important.
It's
What Alan
33.
has told you is so true because this cycle, Democrats are going to have to cover more seats than Republicans.
So they lose ground like we do. Now, GOP plus 6 in the House. I want to know what the internal polling shows. I know what my polling shows. I know you. Internal polling and everything. Are we going to do well in 2000? I mean, we're a year away, but, or we're not really a year away, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, we're a year away. So does our internal polling suggest, with the asterisk that they always do, does our internal polling suggest that it's going to be a good year for the Republicans?
Yes.
Okay. Why?
Why?
This is a
First of
pollster
all-
asking a pollster
First
question.
of all, on the generic ballot and things like that, Republicans are tending to do better in those swing districts. To be candid, looking at the House, there's only about, of the 435 seats, only about 35 to 37 that are truly competitive, okay?
Okay.
My seat, and I don't mean this to gig
You
our
might get a
defending
new
friends.
Republican, but you're not going to get a
That's right.
Democrat.
I mean,
got you.
the Republican is going to win in the
November.
third district of Tennessee, in the second district, in the first district. That's the truth.
That's a long-term cycle
That's right.
around.
Just like the Democrats going to win in the X district of California, probably,
or Denver or wherever. else.
yeah, that's right. Vermont. Okay. Well, there's only one in Vermont. They've got one member. But so having said that, now what could change? Number one, time between now and then. We hurt ourselves. Republicans hurt ourselves by vacating the chair on McCarthy. We've had dissension, we've had division. That hurts when you've got that momentum, so you can't downplay that. That was a negative for us. Mm-hmm. We have a new speaker. I do believe redistricting is going to come in some states. North Carolina, more favorable. Other states, New
Like
York.
the gains in New York could revert back to where they were.
That's right. So we've got to watch redistricting. We're going to lose a seat probably in Louisiana and in Alabama as well.
So you get 36, we'll say,
Yeah.
and what could be what presently, of course, the way it runs in the House, they run every time is 18 or whatever. You're seeing a possibility to gain. That one year we went up 38 or something. Remember, we were way up there.
That's right. When I was elected in 10, there was a strong rebuke of President Obama's policies, Obamacare,
Which is normal
Dodd-Frank,
for a midterm on a president.
but it was overwhelming.
Yeah, it was.
What
It was
surprised me, as horrible a job as Joe Biden has done, I mean, they've been horrible, okay? And I'm not saying this is a Republican, I'm saying this is an American, shockingly bad, because I wish every president well, okay? I thought we would have a landslide last time, and we did not. Well, we had a whimper. We won 10
You've
seats.
got so many cultural polarizations that it's not about. And, Trump has held the camera for 6-8 years.
It's Donald Trump's party. So let's talk about that. Trump is going to be at the top of our ticket. Probably Joe Biden will be at the top of their ticket.
Well, Trump's going to drive blue and red votes.
That's right. That's right. He I totally agree. You're going to love him like I do or not like others. That's right. And you look at those 6 or 8 swing states, okay? That'll be the presidency. Probably where Donald Trump performs well, Republicans will perform well. Let's look at New York last time. Lee Zeldin did not win the governor's race, but he ran very well against Hochul in areas like Long Island and Westchester County. And Republicans won all those congressional seats. It was huge. Looking at the House, right now, I'll predict maybe a gain 10 to 12 seats.
So we might be plus 18 or plus 15.
That's right.
We can get
Okay.
there with that. We
Now,
can get there with that.
What could happen?
Got it.
we could really have a big night and be plus 30, or we could have a bad night. And that's why I work so hard to elect other Republicans. We could conceivably go down 10. Okay, it could happen. I don't think it will happen, but that's scenario. The polling's showing now we're competitive, we're good, we're doing that. Senate, I do think we have the chance to probably be about 2 or 3 up.
But if you get both the House and the Senate, Biden can't get anything done.
Well, the problem with that is you look at our Supreme Court. I want Donald Trump putting justices. Biden put one
They have to be
person on the
approved by the
Supreme Court.
Senate?
Yes.
Well, if you're 53, they ain't going on.
That's true, but eventually you're going to get somebody.
Yeah, sure.
And the like.
Keep
And
throwing
when
names
you
at
have a justice like
Right, I got
like
you.
Biden got us, you're going to get a left-wing justice who always rules their way, okay? And with Republicans, sometimes you do and sometimes you don't.
See, the Democrats are having a hard time. I've talked to pollsters around the country. They're having a hard time in our polling. We talk to each other. They're having a hard time overcoming the snapshots of Biden that the general public sees. In other words, we have a dysfunctional, maybe if you like Joe Biden, he's dysfunctional reading. People just are embarrassed by it. And they may be progressive, but they want a different progressive.
Yes.
Kind of like Washington State, you know.
But okay, let's all agree that he's weak. He's got cognitive problems.
Yes.
People don't want him. The Democrats
Yes.
don't have faith in him, and the like.
Yes.
But
It's a brand.
why did that not translate into a Republican landslide in the Senate and the House last time?
I don't know.
And okay, now so we've got to look at that as Republicans, I think, and then looking ahead. We have to say we want to win the White House with Donald Trump, but we have got to make sure that we win House and Senate seats. So if Joe Biden is their nominee and is going to be that objectionable, is that suburban housewife going to go out and maybe not vote for Joe Biden, but then vote for a Republican, a Democrat for Senate or for House? I don't know that answer.
It will take a miracle, and I've polled all over Tennessee, but Donald Trump will overwhelmingly carry men, and he will not make much ground with women. I'm telling you, I see the numbers every day.
Interesting.
It's just not there. I mean, and you know, we always joke about it, but women are slow to forgive. You know, I mean, the bottom line is there's a lot of people that are just don't like his whole presentation in terms of his personal life, and the bottom line is that, but they forgave Bill Clinton. I mean, help me with that.
Yeah.
I mean, so, but overall,
They liked him. It was easier to forgive.
yeah,
They
but
liked
you know, now that we have modern technology from Kennedy to Clinton to everybody, personal lives aren't a big issue anymore for a lot of people unless you steal money.
Yep.
My old judge friend from 30 years ago told me you can do anything you want in office, don't steal money.
Here you go.
And that was a big thing. So I'm hoping that we all realize now that there are no perfect candidates. Maybe Bill Hagerty, but I mean, other than Bill Hagerty, there's no perfect candidates, right? And
That's great. Well, let's just say this. There are no perfect candidates, and I can line myself up in a Republican room and say, here's 10 votes I took, and they may agree with 8 of them,
Sure.
but I'll have people in that room honestly look at me. But similarly, I'll go into a room with progressives, and they'll say, well, we like 2 of your
that's right. That's
10
right.
votes. So I get high marks for honesty from Dems and Rs, for competence from Dems and Rs, on subject matters, and for civility for Dems
I got
and
that.
Rs.
Did you see I sent you that little article about civility?
Yes.
They had a press release on it.
And that's it. I had a progressive journalist the other day just said, look, before we start, I just want to thank you for always being civil and kind and easy to approach. So
Well, let me say this.
that's the brand.
As a campaign, and I have more of a reputation of being more of a confrontative type person.
I'll say. But effective. Very effective.
Very effective. Well, somebody's got to shoot. Somebody's got to do the diplomacy. Somebody's got to, that's how it works. But I'll say this. Adlai Stevenson was a great United States senator, but he wouldn't survive in the days he'd done. And you're an Adlai Stevenson. You survive because you're effective and you're hardworking. But everybody's looking for wartime people. They're not looking for peace.
Of course, he made the mistake of running against Eisenhower. I had dinner with Susan
Snapshot.
Eisenhower the other day.
How'd that go?
Oh, it was incredible. His granddaughter, incredible lady. We talked about.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Eisenhower. I don't think
Both parties loved him, and he chose
Oh, yeah,
to be a Republican.
he was glad to get out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
No, thank you.
Merry
Good to see you,
Christmas,
my friend. Let's go
everybody.
eat some dinner. And we didn't mention Steve House in the house. He's still mourning his quarterback loss, but he is in the house today. Thank you, guys.